My name is Sarah, and the day my life split in two started with a joke my mother thought was funny. I was 8 when she pulled our car into a gas station, turned around in her seat, and smiled like this was all some kind of game. "Let's see if she can find her way home," she said as I stepped out to throw away my empty drink. I thought she was kidding. The car door slammed, the locks clicked, the engine hummed as she pulled away from the pump. I stood there, still holding the sticky plastic cup, waiting for the car to loop back around. Any second now, I told myself. Any second. It didn't. The car shrank to a speck on the highway and then disappeared. The noises around me blurred. The pump beeping, tires screeching, strangers talking. None of them were her. Inside the station, I tried calling her on a payphone, my hands shaking so hard I almost dropped the receiver. Straight to voicemail. I left a message anyway, my voice small and breaking. "Mom, I'm still here. Did you forget me? Tell me what to do." No one called back. Minutes stretched into hours. A bored clerk slid a free soda across the counter, and somewhere between the first and second refill, I understood. This wasn't a prank or a lesson. This was the moment my childhood ended. 18 years later, different door, different footsteps, different test. Only this time, I wasn't the helpless kid waiting to be picked up. I was the one deciding who got to come inside. If you want to know how that abandoned 8-year-old girl became the woman who opened that door and why the police showed up 5 minutes later, stay with me until the end. They didn't find my mother that night. They found me. A police cruiser rolled into the gas station hours later, lights off, engine low. A woman in uniform crouched down so we were eye level and wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, even though it was still warm outside. She spoke softly, like she was afraid I might break if she raised her voice. "Sarah, right? You're safe now. We're going to make some calls." Safe. It was a strange word for a kid who had just listened to every car on the highway and hoped one of them was coming back for her. That was the night my file was opened. Child abandonment, possible neglect, no contact information that actually led to anyone picking up. My parents vanished as neatly as if the earth had swallowed them. By the time the paperwork settled, I was living in a small house on the edge of town with a woman everyone insisted on calling my aunt, even though I barely remembered her. Her name was Eliza. The first thing she did was hand me a house key. "If you live here, you carry this," she said. "No locked doors you're not allowed to open." I didn't know what to say. I just closed my fingers around the cold metal and nodded. Life with Eliza wasn't soft, but it was solid. There were rules. Get up on time. Do your homework. Clean your dishes. Tell the truth, even when it hurts. There were also things I'd never had before. A packed lunch with my name on it, a light left on in the hallway, someone who noticed if I flinched when a car door slammed outside. When I couldn't sleep, I drew. At first, it was the gas station, over and over again. Crooked pumps, a tiny car disappearing onto a blank road. Eliza would find the sketches abandoned on the kitchen table, her brows knitting together. "You can draw other things, you know," she said one evening, sliding a fresh stack of paper toward me. "Places you haven't been yet. Things you want." "I don't know what I want," I admitted. "Then keep drawing until you do." So I did. I drew oceans I'd never seen and skylines I hadn't visited. The funny thing was, the gas station still showed up in the corners. Sometimes a sign on the horizon or a tiny strip of pavement under a distant sky. I couldn't erase it, so I started using it. I turned it into a landmark instead of a prison, background scenery in a life I refused to let revolve around that one afternoon. School didn't ask about my past. Kids just knew I lived with an aunt and that my parents weren't around. The whispers faded as the years passed. I got taller, sharper, less afraid of my own shadow. I learned to answer the phone without expecting bad news. I learned to walk into a room without looking for exits. By the time I hit 18, the file with my name on it was thick and worn from caseworkers' hands. But the last note was simple. Doing well with guardian. Plans to study art. No contact with birth parents. No contact. I thought it would always stay that way. 18 years after the gas station, my life finally felt like it belonged to me. I was 26, living in a tiny but bright apartment above a coffee shop, my art studio crammed into the corner by the biggest window. I had a part-time job designing flyers and logos, a growing list of commissions, and an upcoming gallery show that made my stomach flip every time I thought about it. On most days, my past felt like another person's bad dream. Then someone knocked on my door. Hard. At first, I ignored it. It was a Saturday and I had music playing, a brush in hand, sleeves rolled up. Whoever it was could leave a package or come back later, or ideally, forget I existed. The knocking came again. 3 heavy, insistent blows that rattled the thin door in its frame. I froze. There are sounds your body remembers before your mind does. That knock dragged me straight back to the gas station, to the way my heart had hammered in my chest every time a car door slammed or a stranger walked in. For a second, the room tilted. I swallowed hard and forced myself to breathe. "It's just a door," I muttered. "You're not 8. You're not stuck." My phone buzzed on the table. A text from Amy. "Don't forget tonight. We're still going out to celebrate your show, right?" Normal life. Normal plans. The knocking came a third time. "Sarah." A woman's voice filtered through the wood. Older now, rougher around the edges, but still carrying a note I recognized in the marrow of my bones. "Sarah, please, we know you're in there." The paintbrush slipped from my fingers and clattered to the floor. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. I had imagined my mother's voice so many times in nightmares and half-awake memories that it wouldn't have been the first time she'd shown up inside my head uninvited. But this was different. The sound wasn't in my mind, it was in my hallway. "Sarah, it's Mom," the voice said again, words tumbling over each other. "We just want to talk. Please, just open the door." My hands went cold. I backed away from the peephole like it might burn me, then forced myself forward and pressed my eye to the little glass circle. 2 people stood on the other side, my mother and the man who used to stand beside her at the kitchen sink, passing plates and pretending everything was fine. They were older, lines carved into their faces, clothes wrinkled and damp from the drizzle outside, shoulders hunched like they'd been carrying something heavy for a long time. They also looked like strangers. For a long second, none of us moved. I could see my mother's lips moving, rehearsing some speech, maybe trying out different openings before I decided whether to let her in. My chest tightened. 18 years without a word, and now they were on my doorstep like they'd just swung by after work. I unlatched the chain but left the deadbolt on. The door opened a crack, just enough for them to see one eye, one slice of my face. "Hi," I said, my voice flat. "You're late." My mother's eyes flooded instantly. "Sarah," she whispered. "Oh my God, look at you. You're all grown up." "What did you expect?" I asked. "That I'd still be 8 and standing next to a gas pump?" She flinched as if I'd slapped her. The man, my father, though I refused to use the word, cleared his throat. "We deserve that," he said quietly. "We know what we did. We've been trying to find you for years." I let out a sharp laugh. "That's funny. I've had the same phone number for 6 years, the same email for 8, the same aunt since the night you drove away." "We lost everything," my mother blurted. "The house, the business. We've been moving around. It took time to get back on our feet, to fix things, to track you down." There it was. Not an apology. Not really. A list of their own disasters. "What do you want?" I asked. I didn't bother pretending this was a nostalgic reunion. My father's jaw tightened. "We're in trouble," he admitted. "Debt, legal issues. Some people are coming after us for money we don't have. We thought, maybe we could talk. Maybe you could help. Just until we get through this." "Help?" The word landed like a stone in my stomach. I imagined the 8-year-old me at that gas station, watching the taillights vanish. No one had helped her. She'd had to wait for a clerk to finally notice she hadn't moved in an hour. "You abandoned me," I said quietly. "You left me on the side of the road to see if I could find my way home. And now you're here because you need money." My mother reached out, her fingertips brushing the edge of the door. "We were stupid. We were cruel. We know that. We've been punished for it, Sarah, more than you know." "Not enough," I shot back, surprising even myself with how steady it sounded. Behind them, at the end of the hallway, I saw Mrs. Patel from 3B step out of her apartment with her little dog, pausing when she realized who was at my door. Her gaze flicked from their faces to mine. For the first time, I saw the situation from the outside. Two desperate strangers pounding on a young woman's door, voices raised, refusing to leave. I thought of my file, child abandonment, no contact. I thought of all the nights I'd stared at the ceiling and wondered what would happen if they ever showed up again. I had promised myself that if that day ever came, I wouldn't be the helpless kid at the gas station anymore. "I'm not giving you anything," I said. "Not money, not a second chance, not a place in my life. You made your choice 18 years ago." My father's face hardened. "You can't really mean that." "Watch me." I shut the door. Their voices exploded on the other side, pleading, arguing, fists thudding against the wood. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady as I slid the chain back into place and picked up my phone. For the first time in my life, when it came to my parents, I didn't call to beg. I called to report. The dispatcher on the phone sounded calm, almost bored, like this was just another Saturday call. To her, it probably was. "To confirm," she said, "they're your biological parents. You haven't had contact in years, and they're refusing to leave your door." "Yes," I answered, "and there's more. When I was 8, they abandoned me at a gas station. There's a record, a case file. I was placed with my aunt after." There was a pause. I imagined her eyes flicking over a computer screen somewhere, scanning a file with my name on it. "Okay, Sarah," she said, her tone shifting slightly. "Officers are on their way. Stay inside. Do not open the door again." I hung up and backed away, breathing hard. Outside, the knocking continued. My mother's voice cracked as she called my name, promising they only wanted to talk, that they were family, that we could work something out. My father's tone grew sharper, frustration leaking through his words every time I stayed silent. I watched the doorknob like it might twist on its own. When the sirens finally wailed in the distance, my entire body relaxed in one long exhale I hadn't realized I'd been holding for 18 years. I didn't open the door when the officers arrived. They spoke to my parents in the hallway first, their voices low and firm, then knocked gently and identified themselves. I let them in, told them the story from the beginning, and watched as one of them scribbled notes while the other listened, his eyes narrowing at specific dates and details. "You said there was a file," the older one asked, "from when you were a kid." "Yes, child services. I was placed with my aunt, Eliza Martin. She'll remember everything." They exchanged a glance. "Okay," he said. "We'll follow up on that. For now, do you want them trespassed? We can order them not to come back here. If they do, they can be arrested." Did I want them trespassed? The 8-year-old inside me screamed, "Yes." The 26-year-old part of me hesitated for half a second, not because I doubted the decision, but because I could feel how final it would be. "Yes," I said. "I want them kept away from me. And I want to know what can be done about what they did back then, if anything." His brows lifted slightly. "We'll see what's on record," he answered. "Sometimes old cases can be reopened if there's new information or ongoing harm. Either way, you did the right thing calling." The right thing. I repeated those words in my head while they stepped back into the hallway to finish talking to my parents. I didn't catch every word, but I heard enough. Warnings, possible charges, the phrase child abandonment spoken out loud again after so many years of living as if it were just a bad dream. When the officers finally left, so did my parents. For the first time since the gas station, it was my choice. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea that had gone cold and called the 2 people who had earned the right to be in my life. Aunt Eliza picked up on the first ring. "Sarah, what's wrong?" My voice shook as I told her everything. The knock, the plea for help, the officers in the hallway. On the other end, she went very quiet. "I always knew this might happen," she said finally. "I just hoped it wouldn't." "You knew they might come back?" "I didn't know," she corrected. "I expected. People like your parents, they rarely live with their choices forever. At some point, the consequences catch up and they start reaching for anyone they can pull down with them." "So, you think that's what this is? Not regret, desperation?" "I think they regret the situation they're in," she said. "I don't know if they regret what they did to you." Her honesty hurt, but it felt like antiseptic on an infected wound. "An officer said they'd look at the old file," I told her. "He mentioned reopening cases." "Oh, there's a file," Eliza said grimly. "I kept copies of everything, reports, evaluations, court orders. They didn't just forget you at that gas station, Sarah. They were investigated for a pattern of neglect long before that. The gas station was just the first time they couldn't talk their way out of it." I swallowed. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "You were 8, she said softly. "You already thought you were the reason they left. I wasn't going to pile their sins on your shoulders, too." For a moment, neither of us spoke. "Bring me what you have," I said at last. "If there's a way to hold them accountable now, I want to know." "I'll be there tomorrow," she promised. "We're not running from this." After I hung up, I called Amy. She listened in stunned silence as I recounted the same story. "I knew they were awful," she said slowly. "I just didn't realize they were the kind of awful that shows up with police reports attached." "I called the cops on my own parents," I said, testing the sentence out loud. "That has to mean something, right?" "It means you chose yourself," she replied. "Finally." For the next few days, my apartment turned into a strange combination of art studio and evidence room. Eliza spread manila folders across my table. Incident reports, notes from social workers, photos I didn't remember posing for, a little girl clinging to a blanket in a hospital hallway, a house with peeling paint and overgrown grass, handwritten notes about unreliable caregivers and unsafe conditions. Every page was another piece of proof that what happened to me wasn't a misunderstanding or a bad joke gone wrong. It was a choice, repeated, documented, and ignored until the day they drove away and didn't come back. One line in an old report made my throat tighten. "Child expresses belief that she is too much trouble and that parents will change if I'm better." I remembered saying that. I just hadn't realized someone had been listening closely enough to write it down. By the time the detective called to set up a meeting, my decision was already made. If there was any justice left to squeeze out of what they'd done, even after all these years, I wanted it. The detective's office was smaller than I expected, cluttered with files and a dying plant on the windowsill. He introduced himself, offered coffee I didn't drink, and opened a fresh notebook. "Sarah," he began, "I've reviewed the old reports and spoken with your aunt. I also read the officer's notes from the other night. I'm sorry for what you went through." People say that a lot when they don't know what else to say. This time, it didn't sound like filler. It sounded like he'd actually seen the words on paper and understood that they weren't just stories. "So, what happens now?" I asked. He tapped the stack of photocopied reports Eliza had brought. "Some of this is too old for criminal charges," he said. "Statutes of limitation are tricky, but the abandonment at the gas station, combined with the new contact, the way they showed up, the financial pressure they're putting on you." He paused. "We may not be able to punish the past the way it deserved, but we can absolutely protect you in the present." Protect? There was that word again. "I don't just want protection," I said quietly. "I want them to face what they did, even if it's just being forced to say it out loud in a room where someone else is listening." "We can document everything," he said. "If they keep contacting you, we can move from warnings to charges, harassment, intimidation. If they try to use your identity or pressure you into signing anything, that's fraud. And the old file doesn't just disappear. Judges don't like seeing the words child abandonment next to someone's name," He studied me for a moment. "I won't tell you what to do, but I will ask you this. What do you need to be able to sleep at night?" The answer came easier than I expected. I need them to know that they don't get to walk into my life, demand help, and walk out again like nothing happened. I need them to understand that there are consequences for them, not just for me. His pen scratched across the page. Then he nodded once. "If they reach out again, call us immediately. If you're willing, we can be nearby." Not to ambush them, he added, but to make sure things don't escalate and to document their behavior firsthand. I left the station with a card in my pocket and a strange sense of momentum, like I'd finally turned around and started walking toward the monster instead of away from it. My parents didn't show up the next day or the day after that. For a week, my phone stayed silent except for texts about the gallery opening and Amy sending me bad memes to make me laugh. Then the messages started. Unknown numbers, voicemails I didn't listen to at first. When I finally played one, my mother's voice crackled through the speaker, thinner and more desperate than before. "Sarah, please. We didn't mean for it to go like this. We just need to talk. We're sorry, okay? We're in trouble. You're doing well. You can help us. We're still your parents." Still your parents? I forwarded the voicemail to the detective. A few hours later, he called back. "If you're willing," he said, "we'd like to be there the next time they come by. You don't have to let them in. Just keep your door closed and talk through it like last time. Do you think they'd come if you told them you were ready to listen?" The thought made my skin crawl. But another part of me, the part that had spent years painting that gas station into the background of every canvas, felt something cold and precise click into place. "They'd come," I said. "If they thought I might finally give them what they want, they'd come." We set it up 2 days later. I sent one message to the number my mother had been calling from. "If you want to talk, come by my apartment on Thursday at 6. We'll do this once. After that, no more surprises." The reply came almost immediately. "We'll be there. Thank you, sweetheart." Sweetheart. The word almost made me laugh. On Thursday, I cleaned the apartment the way I always did when I was nervous, wiping the same counter 3 times, straightening stacks of canvases that were already straight. Eliza sat at my table, arms crossed, watching me pace. "You don't have to do this," she reminded me. "You can tell them not to come. We can leave town for the weekend." "I'm tired of running in my head," I said. "I need to hear them say it. I need them to hear me say no." She studied me, then nodded. "Then I'll be here. You're not doing it alone." At 5:45, my phone buzzed. A text from the detective. "We're in the building. If they show up and won't leave, call. We'll be at your door in minutes." At 5:58, the first knock came. It was softer this time, almost tentative. Then another, harder, when I didn't immediately answer. "Sarah." My mother's voice floated through the wood. "It's us. We're here." I stood just out of sight, my heart pounding but my feet solid on the floor. "Remember," Eliza whispered, close enough that only I could hear, "you're in control. This is your home, your door, your life." I took a breath and spoke through the door. "I'm here. I'm not opening it. We talk like this." There was a small, stunned pause, and then my father said, "Fine, as long as you listen." They started with their story. It was a mess of excuses and half apologies. The failing business before I was born, the fights over money, the feeling of being trapped by having a child too young. How the gas station was, in their minds, supposed to be a wake-up call. How they panicked and kept driving, then convinced themselves that social services would take better care of me than they ever could. "You made a choice," I interrupted. "You didn't panic for 18 years. You drove away and kept going." My mother's voice cracked. "We were ashamed. Every year that passed, it got harder to come back. We watched your aunt's Christmas posts, your school pictures. We thought you were better off without us, until things got bad for us." "And then," I finished, "then you remembered I exist, because you needed something." They went quiet. You didn't lose your daughter, I said. You gave her away on a highway next to a gas pump. From the corner of my eye, I saw Eliza's throat move as she swallowed. Her hand found the back of a chair and gripped it. We're trying to fix it, my father insisted. Look, we're here. We're talking. You're successful now. You can help us pay off the worst of it. A loan. That's all we're asking. We know you have savings. We saw the article about your show. You're doing fine. Something in my chest snapped. You checked up on me, I said slowly. For years. You knew where I was, knew I was alive, and you still never called until you needed money. On the other side of the door, my mother started to cry, loud and messy, the way she used to when a bill arrived in the mail and there wasn't enough in the account to cover it. Please, Sarah, she begged. They're threatening us. If you don't help, we could lose everything. You already lost me, I answered. That should have been everything. They kept talking. I let them. Every word, every plea, every justification threaded itself into a timeline going back to that gas station. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. This wasn't about love or guilt. It was about survival. Theirs, not mine. My phone sat on the counter within reach, screen lit with the detective's number, ready to dial. You told a cop you wanted them to face consequences, Eliza said quietly, reading my thoughts. You don't have to do this for anyone but yourself, not even for me. I picked up the phone and pressed call. They're here, I told the detective when he answered. They're at my door asking for money, admitting everything they did. I feel unsafe. I want you to come. On our way, he said. Stay inside. Keep the door locked. Keep them talking if you can. I slid the phone back onto the counter and leaned against the door frame, suddenly calm. You know, I said, raising my voice so it carried through the door. For a long time, I thought the universe would even things out on its own, that karma would handle you. But I realized something. What? My father demanded. I realized the universe doesn't knock on your door, I said. Sometimes you have to. They didn't understand what I meant. The sirens outside did. They started as a faint wail in the distance, growing louder, closer, slicing through my mother's sobs and my father's muttered curses. The dog in 3B started barking. Footsteps pounded up the stairs. The knocking on my door stopped. Sarah? My mother whispered. What's happening? Red and blue lights flashed through the peephole. Someone pounded on the main apartment door down the hall, voices calling out clear commands. I could hear my last name. 5 minutes after my parents started knocking on my door, the police were knocking on theirs. Eliza looked at me, something like fierce pride flickering behind her worry. Whatever happens next, she said, you didn't abandon anyone. You chose yourself. For the first time since that gas station, I believed her. When the siren stopped outside my building, the hallway went quiet for half a heartbeat, like the whole place was holding its breath with me. Then everything happened at once. I heard the main door downstairs slam open, boots on the stairs, radio chatter bouncing off the narrow walls. My parents started talking over each other, their voices rising in panic. This is ridiculous, my father snapped. We're her parents. We're not criminals. You abandoned a child, an officer answered, his voice clipped and professional. Right now, you are here uninvited after being warned not to return. That is enough. There was a sharp knock on my door, not frantic this time, controlled. Sarah, it's Detective Cole. Can we come in for a moment? I looked at Eliza. She nodded once. I unlocked the door and let him and another officer step inside, then locked it again behind them. The hallway noise became muffled, distant. In my living room, everything felt strangely small and too bright. Are you okay? He asked. No one had ever asked me that with my parents on the other side of a wall before. I'm fine, I said. My voice was steady. My hands weren't shaking. That felt new. He gave the room a quick glance, probably checking for signs of a struggle, then focused on me. They're being detained in the hallway while we sort this out. I need to ask you again, on record. Do you want them formally trespassed from this building? Yes, I said. I don't want them here ever. He nodded and made a note. You did a good job keeping the door closed, he added. You also did a good job getting them to talk. We caught more on the hallway camera audio than you might think. I blinked. Camera? He pointed up at the corner of my ceiling near the door. I'd always thought the black dome belonged to the building's security system and had never paid much attention to it. It covers the hallway outside your unit, he explained. We have footage from the other night, and we're recording now. Combined with the old CPS file and what your aunt brought in, this is more than a bad family reunion. Eliza stepped closer. What does that mean exactly? He looked between us. It means we're not just talking about a one-time mistake 18 years ago. We have a documented pattern: neglect, abandonment, now harassment, intimidation, and attempted financial exploitation of the same child they abandoned. Only that child is an adult now, and she called us instead of waiting for them to decide her fate. The words sank in slowly. Pattern. Exploitation. Financial exploitation? I repeated. Because they asked me for money? That alone is ugly but not illegal, he said. What is illegal is this. He pulled a folder from his bag, slid out a photocopied document, and held it where I could see. When we started digging after your call, we ran your name through a few databases. Someone already tried to use your social security number to apply for a personal loan last year. It was denied, but the attempt is on file. The contact number traces back to one of your mother's previous addresses. My stomach dropped, even though some part of me wasn't surprised at all. So they were already trying to use me, I said. They just didn't tell me. That's why I asked what you needed to sleep at night, he replied. Because from where I'm standing, we're past hurt feelings. We're talking about identity theft and a long history of putting their needs above your safety. Outside, my father raised his voice. We just want a chance to explain. She owes us that much. Eliza's jaw clenched. She doesn't owe you anything, she muttered under her breath. The detective met my eyes. Here's what we can do tonight, he said. We issue a formal trespass order. If they come back, they go to jail. We take statements from you and your aunt, collect the footage, and forward everything to the district attorney. They'll decide whether to pursue charges for harassment and attempted fraud. What about what they did when I was 8? I asked. He exhaled slowly. Some of it is outside the window for criminal prosecution, but it isn't invisible. Judges and prosecutors see patterns. Old reports matter. And if they're charged now, those old reports help the court understand who they're dealing with. It wasn't the clean justice I'd fantasized about as a kid. Sirens screaming back in time to that gas station. Officers pulling my mother out of the driver's seat before she could leave me behind. But it was something. Okay, I said. Do it. Whatever you can do, do it. He nodded once, like he'd been waiting for that. One more thing, he added. They want to talk to you out there. I'm advising against it, but if you want to say something with us standing right next to you, you can. Just know they'll probably try to turn it emotional again. I didn't answer right away. I looked down at my hands, at the faint smudge of paint still under my fingernails, at the tiny silver scar on my thumb from when I had sliced it open on a broken toy as a child, and my mother had told me to stop crying because we can't afford weak children. I had cried alone in the bathroom that day, pressing toilet paper to my skin until it stuck. Now I had 2 officers and my aunt waiting to back me up if I raised my voice. I'll say one thing, I decided. Then I'm done. The hallway felt smaller than my living room had, lined with peeling beige paint and a row of doors that suddenly seemed too flimsy. My parents stood between 2 officers near the stairwell. My mother's mascara had bled into dark crescents under her eyes. My father's shoulders were rigid, his hands flexing against nothing because they weren't cuffed. Not yet. My mother's face crumpled when she saw me. "Sarah," she sobbed, trying to step forward until the officer beside her held up a hand. "Please, you have to listen. We're your parents." "There it is again," I said quietly. "That word. You keep using it like it's a magic key." My father scowled. "We made mistakes," he said. but we're still your family." I looked from him to the officers, to Eliza standing solidly at my side, to the neighbors peeking through barely open doors, pretending not to stare. "No," I said. "She's my family." I tilted my head toward Eliza. "You are two strangers whose last real act as my parents was leaving me at a gas station and seeing if I could find my way home. I did. It just wasn't to you." My mother's breath hitched. "We've suffered," she choked out. "We lost the house. We've been chased by creditors. We've been sick." "You suffered because of your choices," I cut in. "I suffered because I was a child you decided was disposable. And even now, you're not here because you suddenly love me. You're here because you ran out of options." I stepped closer, stopping just outside arm's reach. The officers tensed, watching, but I kept my hands at my sides. "This is the last time we speak," I said. "You are not welcome in my home, in my life, or in the story I tell about myself. If a judge ever asks, I will tell them exactly what you did and what you're still trying to do. And if you try to use my name, my number, or my guilt to save yourselves again, I will use every piece of paper in that file to make sure it costs you." For a second, the only sound was my mother's uneven breathing. "You can't erase us," my father said quietly. "We're part of who you are." "I know," I answered, "but I get to decide what part. You're not the people who defined me. You're the warning label. You're the before picture I walked away from." Behind me, Detective Cole spoke up, his voice firm. "You've heard her," he said to my parents. "You are being formally trespassed from this property. You are not to contact her by phone, email, or in person. If you do, you will be arrested." "This is insane," my father muttered. "She's our daughter." "She is an adult," the detective corrected, "and you're under investigation. I suggest you think very carefully about your next move." They were escorted down the stairs, past the flickering light on the landing, out into the night where the patrol car waited with its door open like a promise. I didn't watch them drive away. I didn't need to. I'd already done that once. This time, I turned around and walked back into my apartment before the engine even started. For the first time in 18 years, I wasn't the one left behind. I was the one closing the door. The investigation didn't change my life overnight. There were no dramatic court scenes the next morning, no instant headlines, no grand speeches. There were appointments, phone calls, paperwork, waiting rooms with bad coffee and chairs that made your back hurt. The kind of slow, grinding process that real justice usually hides behind. The district attorney's office interviewed me twice. They interviewed Eliza Moore. They pulled every piece of my old case file, every note that had ever been scribbled next to my name. They requested the records from my short stay in foster care before the court had placed me with my aunt. They subpoenaed the loan application someone had filed with my social security number and traced the IP address it came from. A month later, Detective Cole called. "We're moving forward," he said. "Harassment, attempted fraud. We're also including a pattern of neglect history from the CPS files. It won't undo what happened, but it will sit in front of a judge with their names on it." "Will they go to jail?" I asked. "Possibly," he said. "It depends on the judge, their history, their lawyer. But even if they don't go to jail, there will be consequences. Fines, probation, restrictions. Their credit is already wrecked, and this won't improve it. Most of all, there will be a record, one that follows them. They won't be able to hide behind the idea that this was just a mistake." I ended the call and stared at the wall longer than I meant to. When I was a child, revenge looked cinematic. My parents on their knees, tears, apologies. Me walking away while everything they valued burned behind them. That fantasy didn't survive adulthood. Reality was quieter and heavier. It looked like a file folder grown thick with time. A judge reading the words, abandonment and identity theft on the same page. Two people who once controlled my future standing before a bench with nothing left to trade. The hearing was set for 3 months later. Life didn't pause while we waited. The gallery show opened. People drifted past my work with wine glasses in hand, slowing down, leaning closer. I heard words like haunting, raw, resilient. One painting held them the longest. A highway at dusk, a gas station glowing like an open wound in the distance, and in the foreground, a woman with her back to it, walking toward a skyline of light. No one knew it was the closest thing I'd ever painted to myself. After the opening, a local reporter asked for an interview. She didn't ask about my parents. She asked how trauma shaped my art. I didn't give names. I didn't mention court dates. I just told the truth. I used to think healing meant pretending it never happened, I said. Now I think it means telling the story without being the weakest person in the room. Eliza framed the article and hung it in her hallway. Amy made it her phone background. On the morning of the hearing, I put on the only blazer I owned and caught my reflection in the mirror. Hair up, eyes steady. The woman looking back at me didn't look like someone waiting for permission or validation. She looked like someone who had already decided what home meant. The courthouse smelled like paper and tired air conditioning. Eliza sat on one side of me in the hard wooden pew. Amy sat on the other. When the bailiff called my parents' names, they entered through a side door. They looked smaller than I remembered, not thinner, though they were. Smaller in a way that had nothing to do with bodies. They saw me. I saw the flicker of hope, the calculation. If she sees us like this, maybe she'll help. I didn't. The judge read the charges: harassment, attempted fraud, violation of prior CPS contact orders. The public defender spoke about desperation and misunderstanding. The prosecutor responded with facts, one document at a time. The hallway audio played. My mother's voice filled the room, thin, pleading, then mine, calm and clear. You didn't lose your daughter. You gave her away. The judge looked at them over his glasses. His expression didn't change. When it was my turn, I didn't stand up for them. I stood up for myself. I'm not here because I'm angry they're poor, I said. I'm here because when I was 8, they treated me like something disposable. And years later, they came to my home to use my life again. I'm not asking you to fix my childhood. I'm asking you to make it clear that people don't get to do this and walk away clean. My voice didn't shake. Not once. The sentence wasn't dramatic. It never is. Probation, mandatory financial counseling, restitution for the damage to my credit, a long-term no-contact order, notes added to their records, notes that would follow them anywhere they tried to present themselves as caretakers. They weren't going to prison for decades. They weren't living in fear of sirens. But for the first time, what they were was official, public, documented, and I was no longer the only one saying it. Outside the courthouse, my mother tried to catch my eye as they were led away. I turned toward Eliza instead. You did it, she said softly. You walked all the way back to that gas station without ever leaving this city. I didn't go back, I said. I brought it here, and then I walked past it. We went home. Later that week, Amy drove us out of the city, past strip malls and subdivisions, to a lonely stretch of highway I hadn't seen since I was 8. The gas station was still there, new pumps, new logo, same place. Are you sure? She asked as we parked. No, I said, but I need to see it for what it is, not what it's been haunting me as. We bought coffee we didn't drink and stood by the window. Cars came and went, doors slammed, engines idled. No one looked twice at us. I walked to the edge of the lot where pavement met gravel. In my memory, this place had been endless. Now it was just asphalt. I used to think this was where my life ended, I said. Now I think it's just where the wrong people left. Amy nudged my shoulder. And the right people found you. Yeah, I said. They did. As we drove away, I looked back once. The gas station didn't feel like a wound anymore. It felt like a marker, a chapter heading, a place I passed through, not a place I lived. That night, I started a new painting. No roads, no pumps, no doors, just a woman facing a blank canvas, brush in hand, a key resting on the table beside her. When I finally posted it weeks later, the caption was simple. They left me to see if I could find my way home. Turns out I didn't need to. I built one. So here's the question. If you had the choice, would you open the door for the people who broke you, or would you finally lock it from the inside?